We have a huge issue with the chassis. The fact is, Damon is pretty tall. The area that we have inside of this car is not that big. The roof line is fairly low. The sides of the roof taper in quite a bit, which means that it just gets closer to your head. Right around here, we cut the floor out. We made custom seat brackets to drop the seat all the way down to the floor. It's literally less than a ½ inch above the sheet metal on the bottom of the floor. We also pushed the seat back as far as we could. It's maybe 3/4 of an inch or so away from the rear firewall. That position still wasn't ideal for Damon. His legs still had a little bit more angle on them than you would have liked. Just trying to make the least amount of compromises as we can. That's why we actually cut a huge section of this upper frame out of the car. The car went back on the road as it is, and the car rolled over. The driver and passenger would be seriously injured. This would just collapse. We took out a huge piece of structure there. And that's kind of where we're running into some problems. We've got the seat mounted in the best location for Damon, but the main hoop is still right by the side of his head. If he was sitting in the car and the seat was here, it's coming down right next to the side of his head. There's not a whole lot more that I can do to push the main hoop back farther. So I have to cut some more out of here and try to get that main hoop butted up all the way against this sheet metal, which is actually the outside of the car. So if we pop through here, the roll bar, the main hoop will actually be on the outside. I don't want to do that. That doesn't really make sense. That'd be a lot of work to reinforce the roof again so it's not flopping around. It's a very challenging car to build a roll cage in for someone who's fairly tall. First thing we're gonna do is chop this stuff out and push that main hoop back as far as we can. We're gonna put the seat back in here and check that clearance. And if we have to, we're gonna move the seat forward a little bit to get the seat in line with the main hoop and not have that bar by the side of his head, because with the helmet on and with the roll cage padding, it's basically gonna be pushing on his head and tilting his head sideways. That's not good. All right, so here are our Sparco seats that we're going to use in this car. Pretty cool seat, it's a carbon Kevlar seat. It's nice and stiff, it's very light. So we made these custom brackets, basically going to get welded into the chassis. So it's not gonna be a bracket on top of a bracket bolted down to the chassis. It's going to be a one-piece deal where you just slide the seat in and bolt it in. Now you guys can see how tight and unsafe this thing really is. All right, now check this out. So we've got this bar that's right here with the roll bar padding on it also. Your head would be bouncing off the side there, and that is not ideal. So we really need to push this bar back more and possibly even move the seat forward to make sure that this is in front or at least in line with this main hoop. The padding actually adds an inch of thickness, and that's the thinnest SFI legal padding that you can run. So at a minimum, it's gonna be an inch closer. Also, Damon is taller, so he's gonna be sitting up a bit more and really close to this whole curve here, which gets basically tighter as you go up, right? Because it's coming in at the same time. For me, my head would be bumping. If Damon was in here, his head would be pushed sideways and down. And we got to solve that issue. We did some Sharpie marks up here, and Tim's in the car now, and he's gonna go at it with the 4.5 inch grinder. And we actually got some discs for it that are for cutting aluminum, so that's helped out a ton. Instead of using the standard ones that are used for cutting steel, they just gall up and basically build up like melted pieces of aluminum on the disc, and it doesn't really want to cut and it gets really hot. These things are working great, and we've been using them a lot, chopping all of this aluminum chassis apart. Pretty tough working in this car. It's pretty cramped as far as like roof height goes, and we also have to be careful of the floor because it's super thin, and we cut sections of it out, so I don't want to bend the floor by stepping on it and then have to spend a bunch of time to like hammer and dolly and get it all back into shape. Almost done with this side. Obviously I have a ton of cleaning up to do. We're just getting the big chunks out of the way, and then we'll go back in there with a barrel sander and sandpaper and smooth out all the edges and make it nice. But yep, we're getting covered in metal shavings, but that's just part of the job. This car's definitely not going back to stock. We got as much of the sheet metal cut out as we could to get the roll bar all the way back. So now the roll bar is actually hitting the exterior sheet metal. So we're as far back as we can go. We're gonna put the seat back in here and check to see how much more clearance we got and decide if we have to remake the seat brackets and compromise with moving the seat forward to get the proper head clearance back here. Unfortunately, it moved back, but not even a ½ inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch or something different. So I think we are going to have to move the seat forward a bit. And obviously we could do a tilt, but that puts Damon at a more upright position, which means his head is going to get closer to the roof line, which means it's closer to this, it's closer to the bar that's gonna come off of here to go forward, get a measurement off of that. Actually, I might even throw a piece of tape across here so I have a flat plane and I can measure where the seat is and then decide how much further forward it actually does need to go. Oof, that's a lot. It's 1.5 inches. Basically, if we move this forward 1.5 inches, the seat will be right in plane with the tube, which will work, but 1.5 inches is quite a bit. I'm just worried that it's gonna put too much angle on Damon's legs. Yeah, we're like on the floor here, so there's no more room for the seat to go down. There's no more room for the back of the seat to drop and add more tilt. And obviously if we added more tilt, then we'd have to move the seat even further forward because this part would get further back. You know what, Tim, can you grab the stock throttle pedal? Yep. I want to put that in here so I can get an idea of how far forward I'm comfortable with going. Try to guess on how much taller Damon is as far as like how he sits in the seat, how long his legs are. It's tough when the person who is going to be driving the car the most isn't here to actually do these test fits. We just have to guess and hope we get it right.
We are looking for the stock throttle pedal from the F12 trademark registered. Copyright. Ah! Was that a pedal mark?
Bro, I have no idea.
Man, who organized this?
Tim. Brother Tim.
You seeing anything?
No.
We found seats that'll fit.
These will not fit. They're cool though.
They are cool. They'll fit in a Type R.
What seats, Tim?
What seats?
Well, these were never here.
I found a pedal.
Okay, is that what you need?
No. Do not
Do
press.
not press. Is that the brake pedal?
No.
Is that the clutch pedal?
Yeah, this is the second clutch pedal because it's a DCT.
I was thinking that this throttle pedal would probably work the best instead of going with a 3-pedal tilt and assembly with a clutch, brake, and a tilt and throttle, but we'll see. It does have a recess for it, so it'll drop right in. But I feel like we could actually move this a little bit forward with the tilt and pedal assembly because it'll swing from the top, so there might be room to get this move forward. But for now, I'm gonna jump in, see how it fits. I've already moved the seat forward, so this was the position it was in before. This is 2 inches further forward. Now you can see that the roll bar is behind the seat, so that's good, that's ideal. But now the seat's pushed forward and maybe I'll fit in the car, and I'll hop in here and see. So, throttle pedal is sitting in there. It's a bit of a weird angle. It's almost straight up and down. The ball of my foot is further forward. Yeah, and there's quite a bit of room left back there. So I think that if we did a 3-pedal aftermarket setup, that would be ideal. That'll give us a little more room. But right now, sitting here, my legs are very straight with this pedal. So that actually means that I can move my seating position forward, maybe move Damon's a ½ inch further back than that, because that'll give us directly in plane with the main hoop. That should work. So I think what I'm gonna do is get on my computer and remake these side mounts, take what we have here, take those measurements, plug them in, and move the seat forward and have those 2 different seating positions, which might not end up being as big of a slot anymore because unfortunately, I'm sorry, Damon, but this car is gonna fit me better than it's gonna fit you. That's the part that we cut out, but we need to move all of this forward and change some of these dimensions around. So instead of modifying this drawing, I'm just gonna start from scratch and you guys can kind of see how quick and easy it is when you're using a CAD program to design this stuff. This is Fusion 360. It's a new program to me that I've only been using for about 2 weeks now. I'm gonna start out with basically the bottom. I'll just draw that line in there. So start the line, and it is 17 inches long. So I will put that in until it is 17 inches. Mix the line, 17 inches. We can draw a couple circles up here, which will be the holes, stick them out into space here, and then adjust them basically by giving them dimensions. First dimension is the height, and I have that at 130 millimeters. 130. And the height of this is 90. So now those are positioned. It's an 8 millimeter bolt, so we'll go with a 9 millimeter hole that'll turn into a slot later when we draw that up. All right, so now we have our 2 holes and we have the base. So I'll draw another line here. That's a vertical line placed to dimension my hole off of, 30 millimeters. The next dimension is the distance between these 2 holes. It's 290 millimeters. All right, so now I have the base, I have the holes, I have the end of the bottom of the plate. Now I need to draw the top line and then add the slots for the seat to move forward and move up for my seating position. So these AutoCAD programs are really cool. I honestly don't know that much about it. I'm still learning every time I use it, but it is such a useful tool. The direction that everyone is moving is designing stuff in a CAD program and doing a 3D print or a plasma cut or a laser cut or whatever it might be, but knowing some basics of how to use a CAD program is very, very handy. If you're interested, go out there, try it for yourself. Most of the design kind of laid out now, 4 holes, but they're gonna get changed. I'm gonna draw some lines here and connect them and then cut away the extra to basically make the slots. There's a big radius here that is giving me some dimensions, so those are gonna get cut and trimmed and basically cleaned up. So I'll clean all of this up and then draw some more lines, clean those up, create the slots, add some radiuses to these corners so they're not sharp, and then we will wrap this up. There's our thickness, 4 millimeter thick aluminum. Slots are all done. Now, this used to be flat and this was all moved back about 40 millimeters, so everything is shifted forward. So we got our new seating position. Now I can finish this. We can go to the plasma table. We can cut this thing out. Table. This would take so long to cut out by hand. The basic shape, not a big deal on a bandsaw, but to do those slots that quickly, that is amazing. So now we will rinse these parts off, dual action sand them, flatten them out, clean the edges up, and then we can tack weld this together, back on the base, back on the seat, put the seat back in the car, and see if we got it right this time. Yo, what's up? Shooting stuff with the air can. Oh yeah, we will. Dave was just checking in, seeing how things were going. I told him we've got a lot of stuff that we got done. Everything's moving along. Done.
Whoa!
We lost it!
Dude, no way!
This is a dangerous mark.
Well, that's progress, I guess.
Oh,
yes!
I think you dented the door, Mark.
No way!
You better be careful, Tim.
That was good.
Dude,
That was
the
pretty good.
easiest way is the simplest.
Yeah.
That's the way.
Yep. We should get back to work. In fact, we really need to get back to work. But first, need a little pick me up. Get that guy in there. See how this goes. A little short.
There. Delicious.
We got the brackets cut out. Tim sanded them all down nice and smooth. We put a bit of acetone on them to clean them off so we have a clean surface to weld to. We've got it all bolted up. We got our ground strap on here. The TIG that we bought from Amazon for under $1,000 actually works really well. Pretty happy with that purchase, and I get to use it again right now. So we'll tack this bracket on the bottom and we'll be able to put it back in the car and make sure we're moving in the right direction. So we got this thing tacked up, and I want to test out the slots and make sure they work correctly. So crack the bolts loose.
Dude.
Boom. That's cool, huh?
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And I actually changed the dimensions a little bit. I lowered it 5 millimeters. So in Damon's seating position, this actually touches the bottom. There's about a 5 millimeter gap. Now it is down to 0. Just looking for every little bit of clearance that we can get. Just a couple millimeters here and there actually do make a difference. Doing everything we can to get Damon to fit as well as possible in this car. And I am hoping that we are all good and we can move forward past the seat mounting, because we've been working on this for like, I don't even know how many hours yet. We probably have 40 plus hours in all this work here just to get the seat position and to get the main hoop in its place. Like a crazy amount of time. Hopefully this is the last revision and we can move forward from here. I think that's gonna work. The seat is literally as low as it possibly can be. This is all behind the seat. Now it's safe, except for if you rolled it over, that would be good at this point, but we got a lot more cage to build. But I think we've finally moved past the seat mounting problem. Now we can focus on just tightening up this roll cage a bit. We've got some plates that we have to put underneath it to mount it to the aluminum base plates. It's still a lot of work. We gotta do a lot of trimming and cleaning up in here, but I am so happy that we finally have brackets for the seat and it's in its final location. That was a lot of work. I think that's gonna work out, actually. I think, I mean, it's not gonna be perfect for Damon. It is gonna be a little bit of a compromise. He's gonna have a little bit more angle on his knees, so his legs are gonna be, you know, a couple inches off the seat here, where ideally your legs would rest a little more. You know, with what we're working with this chassis, where we have to build the cage to make it safe. The biggest thing is that his head doesn't make contact with the roll bar. If his legs are a little bit tilted, and we can position the steering wheel wherever we want. So if his knees are hitting the wheel, we can raise the wheel or pull it closer so it's in a better place. So we have a lot of room for adjustment in other areas. I know what the dimensions are for a pedal assembly now, so I can look and see what's available and make a purchase so we can get that here and start mocking that up as well. Good progress. I just want to give you guys a little explanation of why seating position in a race car is so important and why it varies so much between all different types of racing. So you have some cars like open wheel cars, Formula One cars have a very, very unique seating position. They actually sit with quite a bit of recline and their feet are up above, basically at the shoulder level. So it seems very awkward, but it gets the weight very low in the car. They're laid back quite a bit, so overall height from their butt to their head is lower, so they can make the whole car a bit shorter, keep the driver's head out of the wind as much as possible. They have the halo protection, and that's basically the ideal position in that Formula style car with the nose cone, and basically that's all the room you have is kind of hunkered down in the car like this, and that's how they drive. And then you'd get into a road race car in a more upright seating position. That's a little bit more natural. You have more room inside of the cockpit, obviously, so you're able to sit up a little bit more, but the seat's very low to the ground because they're trying to optimize weight distribution. You're a driver, you're 180, 200 pounds, 160 pounds, whatever you might be. Getting that weight as low as possible in the car helps everything. Every time you go around a corner, the weight's lower. When you're on the brakes and on the throttle, you don't have all that weight up high moving back and forth. So putting the driver as low as possible makes a big difference over a long period of time in a race. And then you go to something like a rally car, and you'll see that the drivers will actually sit up a little bit higher so they can see more in front of them, because you have a co-pilot with you that's telling you your course notes of what the corner coming up is going to be. Is it a fast corner? Is it a slow corner? Is it decreasing radius? But you might not see that. You have a visual from what your co-pilot told you. You kind of know what to expect, but you're looking more close. A lot of the corners are really tight. You're looking down a bit more. So being up higher allows you to see the sides of the road, the little ditches that you might actually want to drop a tire in to hook yourself around a corner. Where in a road race car, you want to be lower and your eye line as far forward as possible. You want to look as far as you can ahead because that gives you more time to react. Basically makes you drive smoother. So being kind of in eye line with the top of the dash is okay. You can't see the front of the car, it's not that big of a deal. When you are close to another car, it happens, but it's not like you're bumper to bumper for an entire race, and that little, 2 inches of distance different is really gonna make a difference at all.
The delivery.
Well, thank you very much. So, road race setup, you're gonna have your arms, somewhere near 90 degrees. I like a little bit farther steering, and I think I've adapted that style from drifting, where if it's too close, your elbows kind of hit and it just doesn't feel as natural for me. Now, some guys that drift do like a wheel very close and drive a little bit more shuffly. In a NASCAR, they drive very close to the wheel. And I think the reasoning behind that is that they're basically grabbing the wheel and pulling down for the corner and then letting the wheel loose to go straight. So for them, they're not doing a whole lot of movement. They're basically doing this over and over. So having the steering wheel closer to you gives you more leverage. Basically, you have more strength like this. It's not as tiring for your arms. And they're doing 500 miles around an oval course at 200 miles an hour plus. It's a lot of stress on your body. Depending on what the discipline of racing is important. Now, this car is going to be kind of a combination between a little bit of a road race, kind of sprint race style, but more so drifting. So it's not going to be a car where you're sitting in for hours at a time. We're not going to run endurance races with this. They're all going to be short clips, maybe 45 seconds to a minute of actual thrashing, and the tires will be completely gone, yes, in 1 minute. So brand new set of tires, throw them on the car, just go blast through a few corners in 4th gear, full throttle, tires spinning, and they are completely gone after just that short amount of time. So then basically the driver can hop out, refuel, change tires, so you're not sitting in some cramped kind of position for a long time. Your arms aren't gonna get tired from holding the wheel out a bit more, and you give a little bit more room. Sometimes you have to basically spin the wheel or grab it with the other hand because you're doing so many rotations of the wheel. It's not a road race style setup where you're basically max turn is 180 degrees in a very, very tight hairpin. And most turns on a road course would be about a 45 to maybe 90 degree corner. Ideally, in a road race car, your hands are always here and all you're doing is this. Your paddle shifters, or if it's a regular shifter, but your hands aren't moving around and shuffling. I hope that made sense and give you a little bit better idea of everything that goes into getting the seating position correct, not only for the safety part of it, but how the pedals are and how your feet might be cramped if the pedals are too far back and you're in this position and your ankles are almost like tilted as far back as they can go. You're gonna be using your knees more than pivoting your ankles. So it's not going to be as precise. It's going to be a little clunky. Downshifting, trying to do a heel toe or something like that is going to feel a bit weird. When you're in a more natural position, a little bit more stretched out, everything moves a little smoother and better. But one thing I want to double check before we move forward is the angle of the main hoop and how much tilt back it has. Rule books usually say 20 degrees maximum. I like to keep it around 10. And the idea behind that is, well, the more angle you have, if the car does roll over, it just wants to bend over more. So the more upright and more strength you have in it. So let's double check that and make sure that we are good here. It might be hard to see, but we're at 9 degrees right there. So that is pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'm also looking at spots where we can add some strength back to the chassis, not just with the bar, tying the main hoop in. So obviously we still need to do a steel plate on here that gets welded to the main hoop, and then another plate underneath this box that comes from the bottom that has nuts welded on it, and that will get sandwiched and bolted together. So these aluminum boxes will get welded to the chassis after we make that, and that's all done. We also need to make these boxes removable for the time being, because once we get all the tubes tacked in place, we need to drop this whole cage down. So we'll pull the boxes out, drop the cage down, and that'll give us access to weld everything on top. So just tons of steps that you have to do in the right order to make sure that everything gets welded, because if you miss a big gap on top of an inch of weld, that is a huge failure point that could snap in an accident, not only weakening the cage structure, but also there's a possibility of that tube shearing off and then coming down at your head. That is, yeah, no way we're gonna let that happen. It has to be welded 100% all the way around. I'm looking at spots where I can add more strength back, like right here. I think I can make a plate that'll come off the side of this bracket and tie the seat bracket into this main hoop box here. So that's gonna tie in that. I can weld the front of this cross beam to here. So we're gonna add a ton of strength back, and I think it'll honestly be stiffer than it was from the factory once we get the cage all tied in. I wanted to do another thing. I wanted to add a tab to tie into these factory seatbelt spots, but we're kind of in line with them. So I think what I'm gonna do, get a couple bolts and put a bolt in, sand the bolts down at the right angle. So when we put the main hoop in and everything is done and it's back in its spot, I can weld those bolts directly to this, meaning that it's fastened securely to the chassis in this area. And that's gonna help stiffen up everything on the roof that we cut out. Lots of planning, lots of thinking, you know, measure twice, cut once. So a bit more of the main hoop design is going to be tying in the down tubes here. Cut out a bit of sheet metal here that looked like it was extra, but it is to clear this. And that looks pretty good there. We do have to cut a little bit more sheet metal out, and the tube is gonna land on this spot right here. But to do that, we're gonna have to make a steel plate. So we're gonna have to make a steel plate that will bolt on here, and then that tube will come down and get welded onto there. Just complicated to build a cage in an aluminum chassis car. There's just a lot of extra steps and a lot of extra brackets and plates and stuff that you need to make. That's what we're working with. I think it's coming together now. We can finally start moving forward. I'm trying to plan out how all of these tubes are gonna fit together. So this tube is going to kick up and get up as high as possible. This area right here, that would be ideal. There's a fairly big gap, so we can get a tube in there and not have it stick down too much. But then moving forward, we obviously have this big cast piece here. So it will come forward, it'll drop down, and it will be a bit low here. And if the seat was further forward, that might be an issue. But since the seat is so far back, this is gonna be pretty far ahead of the driver's helmet. So we will have a bit of room there. We might do the same thing and just do a little bit of sanding on that, bring that tube down, and then have it drop down here. Over here, I have to make more boxes. So we'll build something that comes up out of aluminum, sits flat up here, allows that front bar to connect somewhere. And then we need a header bar. So basically a tube that goes across to connect both of these. And then we need a dash bar that goes across both sides. And that dash bar will allow us to, we'll strengthen this up, but also mount the pedal assembly to it, because we're gonna do a hanging pedal assembly. So that's gonna get mounted here. Man, there's a lot of work to do still. We have 67 days left, Tim? 67. So much work left to do. So much design, planning, executing, ordering parts. It's gonna come down definitely to the last minute to get this thing done. So I'm still a bit worried about Damon fitting in this car properly. Like I said, it's gonna be a compromise, but I hope it's not too much of a compromise to where he's uncomfortable and is upset with the seating position, because once we get to this point of welding the roll cage in, making all those other tubes, the seat brackets welded in, it just is what it is. And I hope that I don't make a mistake by getting all this stuff done, thinking that he's gonna fit in the car correctly, and then he jumps in the car when it's all ready to go. Oh man, my head's hitting, or my legs are too bent, it's not comfortable for me. Fingers crossed on that one. I hope that we don't run into that issue. I know that it's gonna be a bit of a compromise for me to sit in the car and fit properly because of everything else basically being placed around Damon fitting in the car properly, and I have a good idea of how he was sitting in the car, so I think it's gonna work out okay, but until he's actually in the car, we don't know. There's a lot of work left to do to this thing. There's so many more steps that we have to do just to even finalize the main hoop, the mounting points, the back tubes, and then come forward and build all the rest of the cage. And then we have to worry about door bars, figuring out what style of door bar to go with, how much arm clearance, elbow clearance there is. So as you're driving, you're spinning the wheel, your elbows are moving out a bit. You wanna make sure you don't hit your elbows. That's super annoying in the middle of a run, painful. Shifter positioning, e-brake positioning, getting those pedals that will fit, hopefully, order those up and try to fit those. We've got a lot of work ahead of ourselves.